Thanks very much. Am I on? Can you hear me? Hello? 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 Thank you for the fantastic introduction. Thank you for TEDxLSE for inviting me today. My name is Martin Zaltz Austwick. I'm a lecturer at CASA. You'll hear a little bit about what we do at CASA in cities and spatial analysis and understanding the sort of big social data sets of the future. But mostly I'm here to talk about ideas being sociable. And I got the idea of this talk from a blog post that public engagement pioneer Sophia Collins wrote a while ago. I decided not to call my talk this, partly because there is actually already a TEDx talk called Ideas Like to Have Sex, and also because I'm a prude. So, and there were reasons which become apparent later in the talk why I don't like this particular phraseology. But anyway, Sophia was a creator of this. Was the originator of this project, I'm a Scientist, Get Me Out of Here. And her idea child was between the sort of like lowbrow, lo-fi, or rather high production celebrity knockout show, like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the reality show with celebrities, and some quite sort of progressive ideas about public engagement with science and what that should be. She put those two things together, and she created this project where classes of school children interact online with real scientists, working scientists, ask them questions about science, about what their life is like, and at the end of the 2-week period, each scientist progressively gets voted off. The children pick their favourite scientist, who's given the best answers, who's the most interesting, and at the end, one scientist in each zone wins. It's a fantastic project. What's interesting about this, I was asking about this in preparing this talk, and what was interesting for her was not just the melding those two ideas, but the idea that the scientist would get ideas from the kids. So we think about science in terms of, I'm going to tell you about all of this exciting research that I've done, but actually she was interested in what questions do the kids ask and what concerns and issues and ideas do they raise, and how could that feed into the scientists and give them new ideas. So I've done this project, I did this last year, and it's unusual, so I'm a physicist by training. It's unusual for an adult to ask me, does physics disprove the existence of God? That's unusual to happen. Kids do that all the time. I've never, by an adult, been asked, if I smell a bad smell, does that mean there's a molecule of poo in my nose? Which I did get asked. I hope never to be asked that question again. I think so there's all kinds of ways in which ideas combine, that people combine ideas. I think one of them is one of the really important ideas to come through this is dead white guys aren't very sociable. I mean, it's not their fault. But there's this sort of model of science, as I say, physics, right? You hear the history of physics and you go, oh, there's this guy called Newton, he was very, very clever man. And then a few years later, oh, there's this guy called Einstein, very clever man, everyone listened to what he said. I don't know, I'm not a historian of science, I doubt that was ever the way that science really progressed. But in the future, in the 21st century, that is not the way that science works. All of the big challenges of science require enormous cooperation between large groups of people. So there's just been an enormous grant go to a project to model the human brain, which is enormous because you can't do it with just one person. You need lots of people cooperating across different disciplines. To pick a very obvious example, you see fantastic science communicator Brian Cox on the telly, and he's a very accessible endpoint for physics for a lot of people, and he's done wonders to make physics socially acceptable for people like me. But his project is CERN, and that is a project that involved digging a 26-kilometre ring 300 metres below the ground across the border of two countries, before you even get into building the apparatus, analysing the data. It's an enormous effort of many, many scientists over many, many years to actually get to grips with the complexity of the data, the complexity of the experiment that needs to be carried out to actually move science forward. So this idea that there's a few guys that are doing all the clever stuff. The reason Einstein and Newton are notable is because they're really unusual. I mean, we need those people to spark ideas, but we also need a community of people working together to actually test those ideas, to come up with experiments, to push things forward incrementally and actually work together towards a greater whole. Statisticians won't like me saying this, but statistics was physics, and this is an example of how not only when people collaborate you get new ideas, is that how disciplines can spin off other disciplines. So I say statistics was physics because a lot of the statistics in the 1750s, when sort of modern statistics was really starting to kick off as a discipline, was done by physicists. They took methods from astronomy, and they were looking at data from the state, hence statistics. You know, statistics has wandered off and become a mature field in itself, totally separate from physics. But when you got to the end of the 20th century, suddenly CERN realized that it had these enormous data sets looking for very unusual events, and it started to ask itself, how do I know whether that's a Higgs boson, or was it just, you know, Trevor sneezing when on that particular day of the experiment? How do you isolate unusual but genuine events from noise? And so statistics came back in and helped us out. Now, this is the reason I don't like the ideas having sex analogy, because this would suggest that physics is having sex with its great-great-great-granddaughter or grandson. I didn't mean to feminize statistics, but I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just going to put that out there. So ideas being sociable, that's fine. They're just getting together and having a nice chat. So as I mentioned, I'm a physicist. Physicists are a jackass of more than one trade. I wouldn't say all trades. That would be exaggerating. Whereas a lot of people in other disciplines, they tend to learn facts to some degree, at least at school. If you're a biologist, you have to know the difference between a flower and a cat. And I struggle to remember that sort of thing. And if you're a chemist, you have to know the difference between alkane and alkene. It's virtually the same, isn't it? So I thought, well, I'll choose physics. With physics, you have to learn a few, fairly big concepts, and you can apply them all over the place, and you can just keep on reusing the things again and again and again. And that's, I think, why physicists are quite good at going into other areas of knowledge and sticking their oar in, where they're not actually very welcome and annoying people by going, oh, I'm sure we can figure this out with a few equations. So, but having said that, as soon as so through undergraduate I was a physicist, but as soon as I did my PhD, that had to change in some way. So my PhD was in solid-state physics and quantum computing and nanotechnology, which meant that I couldn't just be a physicist. I mean, I was doing a mainstream physics topic, solid-state physics, the physics of materials, electronic properties of materials, very mainstream physics topic, but I moved to a materials department to get their expertise because there wasn't expertise in the physics department. I needed to work with chemists. I needed to work with people outside my discipline, get their ideas and understanding, because guess what? There were people out there who'd been doing what I was interested in for a lot longer than I had. When I did my first academic job, my first research job after my PhD, it was as a medical physicist, and we were looking at the detection of cancer using light and the treatment of cancer using lasers. And obviously, that requires an enormous breadth of expertise. So there are statisticians to help me understand the data. There were medics to go into clinic, and surgeons. There were nurses, and there were patients. All of those people's collaboration is required to do that sort of project, which is, as I think you agree, a big topic for the future, dealing with disease, dealing with cancer. Without all of those people, I would just be a physicist in a room thinking about cancer, which is not only not very useful, it's also quite depressing. So in my current job, I work at Centre for Advanced Spatial Analysis, and we do things like this. We look at spatial data. This is the track of Boris bikes around London, actually on Christmas Day 2010. We've done some guesswork on the routes, but we know where they started and where they ended, when they started and when they ended. And I can use some of my technical skills to produce this, some of my programming, analytical skills I learned as a physicist, but there's so many other things that I had to do to create this that wasn't physics. Design, geography, knowledge of the city, knowledge of the roads. And that's why the department I work in has all of these people. We have physicists, we have mathematicians, but we have people who actually know about these subjects, like geographers, planners, architects. We have computer scientists who build the architectures that allow this to happen. And it's only by that collaboration that we can do anything that we do. I'm going to skip to the next one. So I've talked a lot about different kinds of science coming together, but actually science can tend to be rather snobby about other people's subjects. We can think that we know it all, but actually there's an enormous amount, as I suggested in that last slide, that we learn from the humanities, from arts, from design, about the way we communicate the work that we do. As Joe mentioned, outside of work, I do all kinds of projects which have got nothing to do with science at all, at least initially. I play music, I write songs, I do podcasts. I learned to make pastry quite successfully. I'm currently learning to make pop-up paper cities. And all of these things feed in at some point. So these collided last year when I got phoned up by the OECD, which is this big international organisation, and they do an international summit on transportation. And they'd seen this video like the one I just showed you, and they really like the work that you've done on visualising Boris bikes going around London. That's very, very exciting. Will you come to the conference? Oh yeah, I'd love to. Will you do a song about it? Okay, yeah. If you fly me to Germany, I will happily come and do a song about Boris bikes for you. So this is me in front of this very important meeting of transport ministers from around Europe and various other parts of the world, singing a song about the journey of a Boris bike. But you never know whether these things are going to happen. Like, not only should you work with other people, you should allow those things to happen in your own brain. You should have activities outside your core interest. You should be diverse in what you're interested in, because you never know where these ideas will feed in. Going back to I'm a Scientist, Get Me Out of Here, the project I mentioned at the start of the talk, I participated in this last year. I won my zone, and with that, I won a little bit of money to run a public engagement project to get people interested in science. And with that money, I ran a competition for young people, 18 or under, to write songs about science, which is something that I'd done. I apologise for this quote. This writing music about science is like fishing about architecture. It's a paraphrase of Frank Zappa. Apologies to Helen Arney, who obviously is a singing science songwriter. But these young people, I had quite a few entries, but these young people are the winners, 18-year-olds Jamie O and Vincent Lam. And they came to the Green Man Festival and taught other young people to write songs about science. So just this chain reaction has kind of rippled through from Sophia Collins wanting ideas to have sex through to us hanging out at Green Man and getting little kids to play songs about science. So I hope I've convinced you that ideas are sociable and that you should be too. Thank you very much.